Thank you for watching episode 2 and welcome to episode 3 of the StingyHubby series. Uh, in this episode, I'm going to talk about the code base that we have for the application. Uh, I would go on a higher level first. At the higher level of the code structure or the folder structure that we have the front end React Finance application. Initially, I thought of creating a front end and a back end, but then later on, I realized that Supabase was providing most of the backend functionalities for us, so including the database tables and everything. So I realized that maybe we just need the front end for this use case. Um, so on top of that, I I also have a higher level folder structure here, and that would be one for the API. Now we will discuss more about the API once we talk about cron jobs and scheduled jobs that we have that run in the background. And the number two would be the source code. Now within the source code we would have hooks, we would have pages, and we would have utilities included in it. So these are all the assets and the codes associated with the different pages that we have within our application, and a lot of components or React components within it. And then we have the app.txt txs, which is the main app, or what you call the root app of the application. And then we have uh, the the various utilities that are associated with the Supabase backend included within it. That would be the source code. And then we have certain Supabase functions and them which come when we associate Supabase or include the Supabase functionality node packages within this application. And then we have package.json. That's the one that has all the information of all the packages that we have installed within our application. And then we have the versal.json. These are the configurations that we have associated with the cron jobs that we will be working on. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it at the moment. So let's start with uh, from top to bottom. Now first I would like to go to the API. Within our application, every Monday in the morning at 9 o'clock, uh, we send, or I the application sends uh, a email to all the users on the application that have registered on the website. So once a user registers on the website and logs in, he or she is enrolled into the application database, and from there we run a cron job every Monday morning that will send them certain information or a newsletter kind of information that they can listen or look at it at their own time. So for this application, we want to query to the database and get all the users associated with that. Then we would want to filter those users who want to subscribe to those emails, and then once they are done, we would want to get their submission histories and list all the submission histories. We would want to create chart associated with that. We would also want to do some calculations associated with the history. We would want to attach an CSV file to that email to give more information about the entries that they have made. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Send that email to the customer. So going deeply into it, first one, to have the database connection, we would want to create a Supabase client. Now the Supabase client needs a Supabase URL, needs a service role key. These are saved into the .env file of my application, which I do not share because these are like a very sensitive data within it. So we would use these values to create the client. And then we would also use a technology called as resend. Resend is a technology that helps in sending emails across, and to use this resend application or resend client, we have to use the resend API key and create that object here. Once that is done, we can we would have a function for Vercel, uh, and that would be just a like a logging service that we would have within the Vercel cron jobs functionality that will help us in logging certain things. So in this case we are logging the start of the digest handler. So at this point of time we would be this would signify to the Vercel cron job that yes, we are starting the process. Now the first step of this is to within the big try catch. The first step of this is to query the Supabase database for all users. So we will query the users table, and then we will select the ID, email and name of the user that we want to use. And then also there is a condition where clause. I would consider that as a where clause, is that the wants digest column within the table should be true. So now if we go to the UI, if we go to the StingyHubby database and we go to the users table, we would be able to see, we get the ID, email, name, and then there is a column here called wants digest. So this column we would want, it is true at the moment for everyone. There are 4 users right now, so actually there are 3, but oh no, actually there are 2, my wife, and 3 are my account. So we both have true as our wants digest. Later on in the preferences, whenever if a customer or if a user says I do not want to receive these emails or I want to unsubscribe from these, at that point of time they can do that on the UI or the website, and that this column for wants digest will turn into false and won't be picked up by the cron job. So at this point, then our only one user will be picked up if somebody decides to unsubscribe. Now at this point of time, if we get any user error or we do not have any users, uh, at that point we should get a console error message that we are unable to fetch the users, and then that message will be displayed on the console, and we would send a status 500 back to the logging system or back to Vercel app, notifying that this did not run successfully. A successful response would be a status 200, like an API. We would give a response back, and then have the messages. If there are any messages, we would include the messages. Otherwise, a simple message saying no users found, in case of that query doesn't give us any users. Now the next step is we got some users. Now in our happy path we get 2 users, me and my wife. So we have 2 users here. So for every user, what we would do is we would query to get the history of those users, submission histories of those users. And in Supabase we would query to the submissions table. We would get all the fields where the user ID matches the user that we are sending in the for loop, and then created at ascending order, or ascending is equal to false. That means in the descending order we would get the latest ones. This line says that we need the latest ones, and limit 10 will make sure, or if you think about it, like in a week, if we right now I am assuming that somebody would daily go and update their finances. If they do that within a week, they can do they can do 7 updates or 7 submissions, or within 2 weeks they can do 10 submissions, 5 submissions for 1 week and 5 submissions for the other week. So I at the initial moment I'm thinking that this limit 10 would be a good idea, but then in the future it's going, since we are going to look into adding functionality to automatically update data, which can run daily, which can run weekly, and then at that point of time we can update this value, either can be 10 or 5 or even 7. So we can make those changes in the future depending on the way we are handling the submissions or updating our finances. Now once we get that history for every users, we should get about 10 submissions when we get that history. In case we have any error or we do not have any history or no history values of submission, then we just continue. We don't do anything about it. We go to the next user. But if we have a history, then we will try to get the total income out of the history. What we do is, for every history, we will get the income field of that history, and we will create a running sum out of it, and that way we would get a total income. For total expense also, we would get values from expense category. Is a list of a lot of let me go to the finance history. Any table would be good, but for expenses, uh, credit cards is an expense, mortgage is an expense, car payments is an expense, and utilities is an expense. So these are fields that are regularly used within the application or within our day-to-day life. So our cron job would also calculate that, say that mortgage, utilities, car payments, and actually one more thing I would want to add is credit cards. Let me see if I can add that right now. uh, we would then update it to have credit cards here. I think it's better I add a feature for later purpose. So let me submit a feedback, add credit card in cron job calculation, expense calculation. Okay, so we have the cron job title, and here we have, and then let me submit this feature request. Actually it's a bug request, but we'll leave it at feedback feature request at the moment. So once we look into clearing that bug out, we would be able to work on that feature. So that has been added into the system. Let's confirm that. We look at feedbacks, and within feedbacks, add credit card in cron job expense calculation. That feature is now added into the table. I will be able to work on it in the near future. So now our total expenses are calculated using the fields within the history, and now savings is calculated as total income minus expense. We would use charts. In this case, we would want to have chart within our email. We would use the quickchart.io, and we would pass in we would create a type of bar chart for this, and our data would be the history, and we would map it to the associated row created at date. So for every day we would be able to create a bar chart for it, or a small bar chart that would signify the expenses and income and expenses at that time. So we would have the incomes listed here, and we would have another label for expenses listed here, and then we would assign certain color codings to them, and then we would be able to create a chart out of it, a bar chart out of it. The second functionality that we would want to is to create or get all this information and save it into a CSV. So we would create headers, we would have an escape sequence for them, and then we would have our data joined inside within it, all the historical or history data that we received from the database included in that, and then we would have a CSV content created out of it using that function, and we pass in the history in that. So now once that is done, we would also want to uh, write a custom message here, a small AI tip that would say create reduce discretionary expense next month to increase savings. Now this one is added as a small section where we would within the email that we would be able to find the AI or AI tip associated with your finances. Later on we would be substituting this one with with the ChatGPT suggestions that we already create and save in the database. So we would be able to apply that in this email. Let me add that as a feature. Add ChatGPT suggestion in email. Okay, and we save it, submit. Now this should be included in the features. So let me refresh this. Add ChatGPT suggestion in email. We can see that now. Okay, so once we come here, the HTML content of the email is now created in this section. We would have the user email and then a certain text that here's your financial digest, total income, total expense, savings. We've sent those decimal points to the second precision, and then we would include the chart URL that signifies the chart bar chart that we created, and then we would also include a AI tip, and then a small text below that to unsubscribe, update your preferences at StingyHubby.com. So we would be later on adding that within our preferences on the UI. A small section here to unsubscribe from emails, and at that point, or digest, at that point the value would be false and we wouldn't be picking up any more users or considering that user for our calculation. Now here we would use the recent API or recent functionality to send the email across. We would send it through using the StingyHubby.xyz domain that we have bought, and then we would have the subject as your weekly finance digest, and then as an attachment we would have the history.csv, which will have the CSV content within it. So every email will have an attachment associated with it. Also at one point we would want to add logging with this logging mechanism, where we would say, okay, I was able to send this email. In the logging mechanism we will have email logs, and we would insert that for this user ID we send this email and the status of this email is sent. That way we would be able to understand, did we reach out emails to this customer, or if we have a bug request in the future and our user mentioned that he did not receive an email today, then we can confirm that within our email logging. And then for the cron job logging, we would be able to say sent email to this email address, and if we have any error then we would list out the error message that we failed to send email to this email address. And overall, after everything runs correctly, we would send a status 200 that would say digest email sent successfully. If there are any errors, then we would say it's a status 500 failure, server error, and then we will come out of the system at that point. One live example I can think of for this is the email that I got yesterday. So let me see if I can share that. Oh no, I didn't mean to do that. Let me see if I can get that. Okay. Okay, this is one of the email that I got received from the cron job that I ran, and that is digest at StingyHubby.xyz. That's the domain we had. The subject of was your weekly financial digest. Then here you have the total income, total expense, estimated savings. The values are test values. They do not signify my current situation, which is good but not so good. And then we would have a chart associated. As you know, all the submissions that we have associated charts with them. Here within this it shows an income of about 2500 while or 3000, while expense of around 12,000, which is not good, given the test data. And then we have a AI tip section here where we would say consider reducing discretionary expenses next month to increase savings. So this one we have hard coded at the moment, but later on we would use chat gpt suggestions to be able to get certain values, and then we would have it displayed in the email. And then we have a history.csv. All is the csv file attached to this email, that all of the data that we collected from the query that we did, we are now have putting that within the history.csv file for the user to look into. And then there is a unsubscribe section where you can update, the user can go and update the preferences on stingyhubby.com, or actually in this case it would be stingyhubby.vercel.app. I will change that one. So instead of this I can change it to version.app. I would want to add that as a feature update. So let me close this mail. We wouldn't want that anymore, and we can go to the feedback. In this case I would make it a bug report, and make it like update unsubscribe link to point to StingyHubby .vercel.app. Okay, I have this saved here, and then we have submit. Now we go to the database, and we now get a bug here. Okay, yeah, I think it kind of conveys the message that we want. So we go back to the app. Let's go back to the code base. So this is the send digest API or the cron job that we would be running. And then we have nothing in the public section is mostly the icon page. So in this we would have the stingy icon. At one point I was thinking of changing the icon, that we had the white icon. As you can see in our website, on the top in the browser tab, you would have the white icon. So I wanted to change it to stingy icon.png. Oh, so this is the one I was thinking of. So maybe in the future, if we get a chance, we would be able to change that. So these files are saved in the public folder. Within the source we have assets, the home page banner that we see on the home page of the application. Yeah, this banner, this is the same banner that I'm using. There was another banner I was thinking, and that's on the YouTube website. So if you look at the YouTube page and on my channel, you would be able to see the banners over there. And then we have the auth component. Within the auth component, we are looking at mostly adding the OAuth related functionality, and we in this point we have a simple OAuth functionality going on. The OAuth functionality is only for Google at the moment. Later on we might look into GitHub, or we might look into other OAuth providers to be for the user to log in. But I think these days everybody has a Google email and a Google account. So having that Google OAuth is something that I wanted to try. So in this case, I have a OAuth, and we are going to sign in Google. We are going to verify ourselves using Google, and then we are going to redirect back to the vercel.app, the page after being authenticated. So that this component, kind of, it's a component if you see TSX, and it works on authenticating through Google. So it exports that component to us into that, which we can use in the app.tsx. So since this is the auth, then let me go to the app.tsx. Now app.tsx is basically I have used it as a home page as well as routing mechanism. I've also included a routing mechanism because I have a sidebar. I have a sidebar on the UI. So this page becomes like a multi-purpose page, which later on I would want to separate the concerns. I would not want this page to have it. I would want to have a separate routers page that or component that I would be able to use or have this code moved onto. But in the meantime, we can visit this one, all the using, or we have imported all the pages, we have imported all the components that are needed on this page and auth helpers. And then basically, yes, react is one of the major imports that we need to have. Now within the app component, we are returning a router, and within that router there are multiple routes. Now the most basic route is the slash backslash, which will be the home page that we would be able to see here. So when I do the home page, I have nothing else, I have a backslash here. Now if I go to app.update, but over here I don't have anything, it's just blank, or backslash app. When I click on the backslash app, that's the sidebar layout component that will be visible. And when I look at update, the update finance page, so for example, when I click on the update finances, I would be routed to app/update. So that is being specified over here. So update is here, goals are here, we have history, uh, then breakdown, suggestions or expense breakdown, preferences and feedback, and the about page. All these pages that you see on the sidebar are visible for us in this one. And then we have we that's pretty much the route, and we export the app for us. So that is the app component that we have. Now the next one, we would go through the components, or actually before I go to the components, I would like to go to the pages. The number one is the update finance page. The update finance page will be, the job of that page is to only export the finance form component. So whenever a person routes or user gets routed to this page will show the finance form component. Now that we'll explore more in the component section. When we go to the preferences page, now preferences page has a bit of code within it. Now in this, what we do is we get the Supabase, we get the client, Supabase client, and then we get the user who is associated with the login, or the user who's logged in into the system. Then here we save a state using useState, like what has the user selected before or after. Is it the line graph or the bar graph that he has used? And then also the suggestions, he has also saved the suggestions in the use state. We have done that, and we are able to now list those suggestions or whatever the checkbox that is there on the preference page. So if we go to the preferences page, if the user has unchecked the show GPT suggestions, that state will be saved within this use state. And then in the use effect section, we are loading the preferences. Now how do we load the preferences? What we do is we query the database, we get the values from the preferences table for all the values associated with that user ID, and we get the single, or every user will have one preference, right? They wouldn't have multiple preferences or rows associated with only one preference. So at that point of time, we would get that one value and we would load those preferences. At the moment, I feel that that's a good session here. We went through the most of the part, and especially I'm happy that we went through the cron job that does most of the backend work or the batch work that we have at the moment. And so I think this is a good point to stop here for this episode, and we'll continue from the same page and look into other activities in the other pages and other components in the next episode. Thank you so much for your time, and hopefully you save more, spend less, and be rich.